And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to episode 5 of the Community CloudCast. I am Eric Schups, Microsoft MVP and CTO of Aptigent, joined by my fellow co-host, Paul McCollum.
Hello, I'm Paul McCollum. I'm a Salesforce technical architect at Accenture and a former SharePoint community group leader with Eric.
Missing this week, hopefully he'll be able to join us here in a bit, is our third co-host, Jason Himmelstein. He had something come up this week, but hopefully he'll be able to join us shortly. So welcome, as always, to the show. Airs around the third Thursday of every month, depending on everyone's schedules. You can find us over on the YouTubes and, of course, on Facebook at our Facebook page. Feel free to reach out and comment to us. You can see our previous shows archived over on the YouTube channel at any time. So give those a visit. You can go back and watch our previous episodes. We're joined this month with our special guest, Ron Dagdag, who I misspelled on the slide. That's embarrassing. Let's see if we can fix that real quick. Nothing like misspelling a guest name, right? Dagdag, there we are. Right. Ron, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Ron Dagdag. I'm a lead software engineer at Spacey. I am in my virtual avatar, but here's what I look like. And I am all interested in augmented reality and virtual reality. I organized the Dallas group for virtual reality and augmented reality. It's Dallas Immersive Design and Development Group. So we meet maybe once in a quarter. We're actually having another session soon at the end of the month. But we do talk about all things virtual reality and augmented reality.
Cool. Well, Ron, thank you for joining us. And I see that Jason has, in fact, joined us this time around. Jason, welcome, my friend.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm going to be here for as long as I can, dealing with some stuff. It's crazy what happens when you have a Thanksgiving week and you're going to leave the country for a week after that, and how busy things get the week before all that stuff happens. So sorry for the delayed start here for me, but I'm excited to talk about some of the cool stuff that happened in the past week in the Power BI space. So
very cool. Ron, am I correct that I think I'm looking at the right meetup page. It's the Dallas Immersive Design and Development AR/VR/MR group?
Yes, that is correct.
Awesome. I'm going to post the link to that here so we can share that out to everyone, so the folks that are watching can go and check that meetup out. Organized by Ron. Is that a virtual or in-person? It's virtual, right?
It should. Of course, it's all virtual.
I was going to hope it would be virtual.
Using
the virtual reality meetup,
right? Yes.
Silly question. All right. Well, let's jump into our content, because I can't wait to get into this conversation. But first, of course, we have to thank our sponsors for helping us put this together. Aptigent and their Power Tools product. We will be, Jason just mentioned, and I'll bring it up on the next slide, at the European Collaboration Summit / Cloud Summit in Dusseldorf, Germany, starting a week from this coming Monday, assuming that they still allow all of us Yanks into the country. We will be there. We do have a booth, Aptigent does, at the show. So if you're planning to be there, please do come by and say hi as best we can, with masks and social distancing and everything else that'll be going on. But it'll still be an excellent show. We've got a ton of content. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Addis has said that it is now sold out.
That is what the speaker communication said yesterday. I'm thrilled I was able to get my dad a ticket in time, because he's coming with me, and I managed to snag him a ticket just before they sold out.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing everybody there for that in Dusseldorf. My first time in Dusseldorf, so this should be interesting. I'm positive we can find a beer garden somewhere in Dusseldorf. Maybe going out on.
I have faith in us, and a Christmas market. We need to find a Christmas market. I'm not sure that they have very many of them there, but yeah,
they might not. But yeah, those are great over there. Would love to do one of those as well. All right, Mr. Paul this is your segment. Any news to share with us this week?
Nothing big that has come across my desk that I would consider kind of multi-cloud from the Salesforce Heroku or other for the non-Microsoft space. I haven't seen any really big news or developments. So sorry, don't have much good there. I'm way too excited to start talking directly VR, which is a little bit off of our normal beaten path of discussion. So
exactly, that's why it's interesting. All right, Jason, all you, my friend.
All right, so huge month this month for Power BI. The November 2021 feature summary. We dropped the first half of the Bifocal podcast just last night. Second half will come out next week because there's so much stuff in this month. Couple of big massive changes. The new format pane. So they've gotten rid of what was there before. What we have now is you actually, in the build well, you actually pick your visual, and then you have a format pane specifically for the visual that you're in. Very different look and feel to it. They've collapsed a bunch of things into the right spaces in the right places. That's all cool. But the thing I'm most excited about is the page and bookmark navigator. So this is a complete shift from what we've had before. In the past, my team was building what we refer to as Power BI apps, which are not Power BI apps, but we were building applications in Power BI with our own custom navigation and sort of standalone report style. And now we actually get a unified bookmark and page navigator. So from a page navigation perspective, you create it one time. It now shows up on every page. You have bookmarks that lay out across every page and do it the right way. It's unified across the board. This has been in the works for over a year. We've been excited about this. I was worried we weren't going to get it till 2022, but we got it now, which is part of why I've been running around like a crazy person because of work, because we're pushing through to try and get this implemented in a lot of different places from a unified branding perspective and user experience perspective. This is a massive change that makes life a lot better for a lot of people. There's also this sort legend capability, which especially for the stacked column chart type of stuff, where you can tell it to go by ascending or descending for the legend itself, whereas in the past you had no control over the legend. Really nice to be able to do that now. And other things here, there's a pie and donut chart rotation. So if you happen to have had a whole bunch of little tiny slices, they used to show up like on the left-hand side, at the top, and everything was all bunched together. Now you can rotate it so the bigger piece of the pie is at the top, and the things lay out much nicer along the left-hand side. You get a little bit more control. And for the new Power BI goals that is out there, we actually have a scorecard visual for Power BI goals that now shows up in the canvas. So you can create a page in your Power BI report and layer goals onto that, as opposed to having to go out of the experience to go to Power BI goals. Those are just a couple of the reporting features that are huge. There's now an Azure Synapse Analytics native connector, as well as a Google Sheets connector, which is the most upvoted connector ask in Power BI over the course of the past couple of years. So we now get that. It's in beta. I haven't had time to test it out because this just recently released, but really big. A couple of other things that are there from a service connectivity perspective, some updates in the mobile section, and then in the analytics side of the world, really big. Power BI Gen 2 is now generally available, and embedding a Power BI report that contains a paginated report visual now works everywhere across everything in Gen 2. That's a huge development as well. So those are the big things for me that are coming out of the Power BI announcements this week. I've been very excited to start playing with it, start using all of these new features. And a lot of stuff that is service resident is there as well. The other big one that I was just playing with this morning, and I'm kind of honestly a little bit annoyed with, is the ability now, we've had this for a while, but it hasn't been right. We have the ability to export Excel to a table and have it spit out a this Excel file from a table or matrix visual, but it didn't keep the formatting. So if you worked on the formatting, you did all of these things, it would not do that. It would just give you the raw data dump. Now there are 3 different options for this, and this is big for people who want to be able to take that and work with it, especially people who are trying to do any type of time binding on it. You get the ability to export with current layout, which should give you the ability in a matrix to hit the plus button and have it, come down. It's not right now for me, but that's maybe just me. You can do summarized data or all of the underlying data. The last two spit out raw data. The first one actually gives you the full formatting. So if you've done bold and all of this other stuff, it actually works really nicely. The thing it doesn't do is it doesn't bring out your colors and changes there. And it tells you that in the visual as well as you start to go off and do this. So those are my announcements that I wanted to share. Really happy that I was able to jump on and share that information with you. But Eric, back to you.
Yeah, great stuff. Excellent. So I'll just hit on a few things. Obviously, we just had Ignite, and unlike in the past where we were kind of doing Ignite wrap up for folks that weren't there, it's all online now, and you can go access everything and watch all the sessions and whatnot yourself. So I put a link in here to the book of news. You can go check out everything that was announced. A few things from the Azure side that caught my attention, I've summarized here. And maybe this is something, Ron, I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but the OpenAI service they've just announced. So that might be worth chatting about. Get some more information from you on that. A couple of things I've mentioned last time, the Azure Container Apps. I mentioned that last month. That's now in preview, along with the new Azure Arc releases. We've got the virtual machine scale sets have been released, a new mesh for Teams, which I didn't hear announced during the show. So this was probably just didn't get in on one of those sessions. But I thought that would be an interesting announcement to get more info. Maybe we can dig into that in a future episode. I love the appropriately named Chaos Studio. That's fantastic. What it helps you do is simulate a disaster situation and with your Azure services and in your tenant so that you can test your DR and failover and multi-region and all that. It's really cool. But I just think, I don't know how that got through legal, that they let them call it Chaos Studio, but I love it.
Oh, but Eric, you're not saying it quite right. It's Azure Chaos Studio. I love this. As a former tabletop disaster recovery planner, like this was one of those things he always dreamed about being able to do. Because back in the olden days, I don't know if you ever had this happen, guys. You would walk around with the CEO and you'd plan it and say, okay, we're going to do a disaster recovery. And you'd have the CEO go pull network cables from the back of the server, and then what happens? Like, see what happens, but it's got to be well planned. You always had the CEO do it because that way, you didn't get in trouble. But yeah, this gives you the ability to practically do that, because this is one of those things like nobody ever thinks that you're going to have a certificate expire on a service or, have a massive outage, a DDoS attack, things like that. Or, just have something completely disappear off the face of the earth. Like, let's say Fresno just disappeared and that was where your data center was. What do you do? This gives you that capability. I think it's really cool. I've started to look into it and play with it just a little bit, but it's really cool that you can finally do something like this.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And then one that caught my eye at the end that to your point about being annoyed is and Ignite becoming more of a marketing show than the technical show was this whole thing about the Microsoft Cloud for financial, Microsoft Cloud for manufacturing, which really is just all the services we already have and just creating websites that say this is what the services can do for you if you're in this particular scenario. There was a lot of yippity yap about it. I thought, this is just packaging what's already there. Okay, there's some third-party apps and stuff with those, but are we really getting any new stuff here? And as I read more into it, I realized we're not. It's all dynamics is really what it boils down to.
So I'll agree and disagree with you on this one, Eric, because I actually had to have a preview for financial services. The goal of this, from what I understand, it's not just, hey, it's a prettier website, but when you go into it, when you go into Financial Cloud, you're not being presented with solutions for manufacturing. You're not being presented with solutions for nonprofit. It really is them presenting the right solutions to the right people who may not be the deep technical wizards, but it definitely is targeted specifically at the dynamics world. But it's how do we build the right views for a bank, right? And specifically for a bank, you want to come in and you want to see it this way. That's what they're showing it to you. So as you're looking at a migration from other things, the goal of it is to be able to bring you into a purpose-made instance where it's like, hey, we're showing you specifically things that we know are relevant to your industry. Whether or not that's going to take traction or not, I don't know. But it's not showing you, oh, well, here's stuff for medical records when you're in finance. Like, I don't understand. Why would I want to see that? So it's abstracting you from seeing quite as much stuff, which when you go in straight into the Azure portal, you see just everything. So that's the benefit of it. Again, I'm not sold on it yet, but I do understand a little bit more around it. So
there's
Yeah.
a
ahead, Paul.
corollary that happened in AWS. They released their Resilience Hub over the last couple of days too. That hopped across my news feed, so it's funny that we're talking about that. It's apparently another in the AWS platform. There's similar thoughts going on. Probably not as good as, and this seems to be more of a step one of monitoring and not simulating outages like you're talking about. But interesting to see the synchronicity across the clouds.
yeah, I think that one's about Azure Chaos Studio.
Relating Azure Chaos Studio.
Gotcha.
Sorry,
Cool.
to the AWS Resilience Hub.
Neat. I haven't checked that out. I'll have to take a look.
All right, so good discussion around that. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of what we're here to talk about today, which is virtual reality, augmented reality. We already have our featured guest is augmented at this very moment on our podcast, which is kind of cool. So, Ron, why don't we start with what your background is, how you got into this space, and then maybe top few things that you're finding really interested in the moment that you're excited about working on. And it doesn't have to be Microsoft; it could be anything in the AI space in general.
So, for me, a few years ago, when I first started dealing with the virtual reality, I was I was attending one of the meetups around town, and they have I think it was they have a VR rig that they're doing as part of the demos, and I experienced to where you can paint around inside the VR virtual reality experience, and I was so amazed at how different experience it is. Like it's nothing that I've experienced before, right? I mean, most of the stuff is through the flat screen, and what you see on the screen are more of like a TV, but this one surrounds you, and it feels like you're in a different. Suddenly, it takes you somewhere, and that inspired me to kind of like, okay, well, I want to learn this technology. What can we do with it? What can we experiment and try out? And then I got into the AR space. And then, of course, the more and more I get into it in terms of the AR and then VR, how do you make it easy for the users to be able to access this or have that? And I got into learning, well, I need a little bit of AI and a little bit of Internet of Things, be able to merge that together and in that space and learn more about and understanding that technology. And so I organized a few meetups around town related to around here in Dallas related to VR and AR, and also Internet of Things stuff, because I know in the future a lot of these devices would feel seamless, right? Like they're going to be part, just like I remember when we first working with computers, we have these big desktop machines where we would do programming, or even before that, it was like the whole size of the building. It gets smaller and smaller up to right now. We're using phones, and of course, we have smart devices. It's always easy to access, easy to get to, and I believe the augmented reality and the VR technology, it's going to revolutionize how it's gonna, just like how we use our phones nowadays, incorporating that into our daily lives. So that's
there were two seed topics, if I can here, Ron, that have me engaged and have me wanting your perspective. Well, and maybe three. So one of my biggest and most favorite about virtual reality is, if you could see my desk right now and the number of monitors that I have working and the numbers that I have just recently spun out, that once you strap a VR headset to your face, you're basically surrounding yourself with virtual monitors without all of the heat and power draw and everything there. So to me, it's next wave for desktop capabilities and the ability to have a lot of information and be able to access it without a whole lot of gesturing and just by moving your head in a very natural assortment. And then two, once you have 360 degrees of available screen space, what is the user experience hurdles that we're going to jump through? Right now, there are a lot of really good rules about what to do in your 1920 by 1080 pixel screen space and how to arrange data so that in a two-dimensional flat single slice of cake, where you can arrange data and F pattern eye scans where we start at the top right, top left, and we scan right, and whatever the bigger text is, we read and we start scanning it at lower and lower levels. And then what does that mean whenever you have a 360 panorama view of information and reality is no longer even partially involved, because I can look down underneath me where there's usually nothing, and I can have a different class of information below the horizon, above the horizon, left, right, depth, and so forth. And all of our simple X, Y in a plane becomes meaningless when we have 3 and 4 more dimensions to be able to work with and start producing kind of, how do I present data in that space? How do I engage the user? And what are some, I look at road signs and I'm traveling down the street and I see road signs and I want to turn left and right. And I'm looking at, I haven't seen anybody do those kind of models with information, but that's kind of a natural data organization paradigm that we all have and want to put in there. And then how do we start translating that to the business? So if we want to have a virtual walkthrough of information, where's that and what are those challenges? Sorry, just a bunch of seeds there.
Yeah, there's a lot of in terms of, think about data having different layers, right? While you're driving, there's different layers of information that is around you that giving you that, right? If you think about the road signs, right? That's one layer that you interact with, but there's also another layer in terms of you're as you're driving, right? You see the ads. That's another layer that as you drive down the street, right? So there's different information that they may be that in VR you can actually reduce and increase, right? Because right now we're in the world of information overload. There's too many things. If I want to learn about stuff, I Google it or find it on YouTube and learn more about that, right? There's information overload. And the way I kind of see where VR and experiences would be like is reducing that into something that we can easily, as humans, instead of just reading about it on a book or a screen, experience it. It's a different way of learning and understanding that or perceiving that information. So if we're talking about data, how do you showcase that data so that it's effective to learn, to understand, and to communicate well? And for us, we've been communicating with the 3D world, and we're familiar with it. And so where I see where the VR is, or in the AR world, is more of the situational awareness, or what I remember when I was you work for this company, right? And then they would have you take this test or these related to what you call these related to like safety, or related to how do you deal with coworkers, or I'm talking about, right? Like you work for a big company, they have all these
compliance
different compliance training. And that's where I kind of see where we can we be able to give situational awareness and get that VR training rather than going through and read all these and watch videos. Does that make sense? It just
I think so.
gives you that different layer of understanding and learning about that. So in terms of how do you deal with certain situations, so let's say if you're a policeman, so that's where I kind of see where the VR is very useful in terms of where we can learn from these different experiences.
Yeah, I learned how
Fantastic.
useful VR could be when watching Lawnmower Man. And I think right away could see the potential of virtual reality. But that's, God, what was that, mid 90s that Lawnmower
Oh,
Man
Yeah,
came
that was
out?
yeah,
some time
that's
back. Yeah.
so.
And of course I'm speaking tongue in cheek a little bit, but we've had the concepts, we've had the ideas, we've seen kind of some of the mock-up interfaces. I'm what do you see as the main challenges to getting us to be able to take advantage of those in the workspace? I mean, we've got, I think, the Oculus Quest 2, which is, it's
Yeah,
under $300 virtual reality device, is the first of its kind, and it's half the price of the next compatible one, which has put it in a lot more hands, and I think that's a leading. Um,
yeah.
but do you see any other challenges of the technology, and whether it's the actual technology and just besides the cost? What are the other challenges that are keeping it from being adapted places that cost isn't isn't an obstacle?
In terms of the enterprise world, um,
Yes.
it's not just that. It because the way I kind of see it is more uh, getting awareness. It's more, if it's certainly new in any technology, right? Uh, Everyone was surprised when I logged in, and it looks like I'm in my avatar space, and it's being able to uh, like it's still cartoonish, right? The way you kind of look at it is like, well, am I just gonna watch a video game, or I'm gonna play games on this? So the way that they're marketing it right now, like on the VR space, is more of the gaming world, right?
Hmm.
And that right there is that it reduces the adoption because of that. Uh, but I think more and more, it's in terms of the value where we can have this in the enterprise is the AR side of things, which is the augmented reality, where it brings stuff in front of you, right? Meaning, you know, if we're wearing something like glasses and be able to augment things that is around you uh, and interact with it. So that's where it's kind of like when we talk about the HoloLens, and
Hmm.
that's a good example of it. And where the best use case of it in the enterprise uh, is the a way to be able to do a remote assist, right? You have an expert remotely, and if you want to show what you're looking at to the person and have them walk you through the process, uh, you know, HoloLens is the best way to accommodate that, right? So the person will be able to augment and be able to view what's going on, and the other person remotely can actually help uh, walk that person through the fixing, let's say, an engine, or fixing
Hmm.
you know, a server, different use cases for it.
Yeah, we got to get the Miguel kids to come on. I think one of our friends' sons, who's I think was
Hmm.
10 when he started doing HoloLens development. But and on that, speaking of people starting in, I went and watched one of your sessions, and you brought up, and it was 5 or 6. It's more than 5 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's got to have been 2017. I'm trying to remember what
Hmm.
phone I had whenever I did this, and you brought up the ARJS library, which
Right.
meant that I could take a phone and do like the Daydream on a phone or the Google Cardboard
Hmm.
version of
Yeah, I
VR,
remember that.
and put that on my phone and view a web page that was rendering in stereoscopic 3D. And it had the Chrome browser had motion tracking. So
Yes.
one, you could do kind of a flat perspective into VR and just move around and see in virtual reality this page that I had designed in HTML and JavaScript, rendering a 3D landscape a full 3D environment, and could also switch over to an augmented version, to where I was viewing
Mhm.
things and it was looking for, I forget what the kanji anchor tags they were called, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
you could set that particular page to recognize a tag in reality and render virtual reality on top of that. And I did a proof of concept of that at 7-Eleven 5-6 years ago, where I went
Cool.
into one of the stores. I put the tag on a row of a candy shelf, which they're
Right.
constantly reorganizing and putting new products, and we send the corporate office would send recommended layouts out to the stores, and I got it to where you could look through your phone and see the recommended layout superimposed over reality, letting you kind of
Mhm.
move stuff in reality to match the virtual thing that was hovering over there. I had that working 6 years ago based off of a 10-minute conversation of yours that I had, but I still don't see people engaging with that. And that's where I'm still wondering what those challenges are, because it's ready. Our devices can handle it. Is there an
Mhm.
emotional hang up? Is it, um, what are those are the challenges I'm looking to try and identify, so we can shame people into start using this technology that's already there, and say, stop being worried about X, because
Right.
that's what's keeping you from getting to Y.
Oh, one thing that I can see is because it's still sometimes in UX, right? It's the extra clicks that you have. Oh, do I have to go through and plug my phone or do some extra thing? And I think that's the reason why Quest is winning in the VR space, right? Because for one thing, there's no wires around you. You just wear it, it starts
Hmm.
working. So it's those little things adds up as the technology improves. Now, right now it's too heavy, but once it gets lighter, once it gets that has the form factor of that looks like sunglasses or eyeglasses, and
Hmm.
you can switch from VR to AR. That's when you know it's going to be able to to give you. Of course, another one is hand tracking. We didn't used to have hand
That's
tracking before, right?
Yep.
Now that we have started to have hand tracking, and
Yep. Quest just
and
added that
has yeah,
fairly
the
recently.
Quest
Yep.
have that, and then of course now they're looking at, well, how do you be able to type and write, in VR? Because right now you can wear your VR device, you can map the keyboard, and you can actually work in VR, but maybe in few hours, maybe not the whole day. So it's
Hmm.
still, because it's heavy, because the how the UX feels still clunky. The same way as I remember when we used to have you know uh, VHS tapes, right? You have to rewind it,
Hmm.
and it gets clunky. And then once we have DVDs and you just pop that in, just we suddenly moved to that. And then of course now that we have YouTube and all that, you can easily search without even going to Blockbuster and getting the, you know, and returning the movies and all these different things. As it progresses, uh, it the UX side of it, right, makes it really easy. The experience and how you interact with these devices really makes it uh, that's when it's going to be able to uh, have adoption.
Okay.
So I think one of the limiting factors too is the tool set. This feels a little bit like early enterprise web development, where we didn't have a sophisticated tool set for bringing things to life, and it was all rather clunky and disconnected and whatnot. A good friend of ours, Robert Boak, fellow MVP, has done some HoloLens development, specifically
Mhm.
around the type of training that you were talking about, Ron, where in their scenario, it's a healthcare application where they're training the cleaning staff to target specific areas that are high touch and
Mhm.
tend to get missed and are potential bacteria areas and whatnot. So as you move around the room, it can pick up and highlight things and tell you need to do extra cleaning here, or this spot was missed, or that kind of thing,
Right.
which is a world of difference between having a checklist or something on paper that
Right.
says check these things, right? Because you can see it's a very cool application of the technology. But I know he struggled a lot with the implementation of the tooling, trying to just get it written. Felt like trying to push 3 boulders up the hill at the same time. So do you think that as the tooling improves and it becomes like writing a modern web app, for example, that we will start to see more adoption because it's just easier to get these apps out there in a usable fashion?
So what if there's a PowerPoint VR in the future? We don't know, because once that makes it easy to write the
Do we have
content,
enough
it will just
PowerPoint?
display it, right?
Anything with that.
So
Maybe applications would look like that. That makes it,
So I'm
better.
extrapolating in my head a little bit, and your point earlier about is some of the distance that we're having to cross because I was around whenever you were trying to get accountants to use Excel, and it took forever. They'd have a computer on their desk and they would push it aside to work on tabular spreadsheets, and it took a good 4 or 5 years before everybody move from this part of their desk to this part of their desk. And I kind of took the number of clicks, the effort, and to me it settled a couple of things for me, that the paradigm shift of I'm moving around in the real world is not when I'm interacting with information. I may be absorbing from my phone, but we don't have a preset, and I call it entering the circle. It's a UX term when you hit something that transitions you from one way of thinking and acting into another way of thinking and acting. So video games are really good at it when they have these intros and they're things that fly in that just start building these mental cues that tell you you're no longer working on a shopping list for groceries. You're working on a shopping list for crafting and Minecraft, and you start thinking with your thumbs and not thinking necessarily with your fingertip. And I think VR may cross a couple of those that we don't have. We don't have common headset on time. We don't have I'm walking around interacting with information. It's got to be a desktop experience first. And if I can't see my mouse and so forth, then I'm disoriented. So this now makes a lot of sense. Thank you. The cognitive friction, there are multiple dimensions of cognitive friction and model adoption that we'd have to get to before people could start thinking in these ways and have a casual progression to dealing with data inside of a virtual reality space.
Yeah, and also it gets lonely if you're the only person in VR. After a while, it loses its magic if you're just playing a quest game, a game. If you're just playing a game, that's fine, because you have a quest, you're doing something. But I think the collaboration in VR, I think that would improve the adoption rate, because it's kind of like, well, if I can, if let's say you're having a meeting and some people are in VR and some of them are not, and then it would bring that presence, right?
Okay.
And be able to connect to each other, just like what we're doing right now. We're connecting even though we're remotely. But let's say we all experience, like, we feel like we're in the same room. Now that's the magic of VR. It takes the whole group somewhere, right, to experience something and work on something, right? So it's kind of like having in the virtual office.
Accenture has ported some of its onboarding experience into AltSpace VR. So there's not a whole lot of content in it yet, but there was. That didn't really even occur to me. And one, it didn't occur to me because as more people joined your room, performance really kind of tanked. But two, there was less content, and I was more focused on less content, but didn't realize how comfortable being around other people, hearing them ask the same questions out loud, and being able to have that personal interaction shift from task-oriented interactions made for a much more comfortable experience. So I really like that. That's cracking open a whole lot of psychology doors for me.
And not just that, you remember the event. If you're I don't know if you have if it's in a space, you actually remember more about that event, who you talked to, what happened, versus you watch it on Zoom. It
Okay.
feels, yeah, because the people that you talk to in VR, it seems, you have more. It feels like a different interaction as compared to just connecting through video chat. Uh,
Okay.
it, and of course, and more, especially if it's more of a doing stuff together, right? Because it's playing games, you know, remotely. It's a good experience, right? But being able to experience it as it surrounds you, as you go around, it's a different experience. And of course, it requires some adoption. And if you think about kids these days playing Minecraft and being able to play all these 3D games, they are the ones that are ready for these technology, uh, and it would be natural for them because it makes sense. It makes sense because they started playing video games in 3D already, right?
Okay. Yeah, that helps me too. That's the other. I grew up playing 3D video. I grew up playing text-based video games, but
Yes.
3D as soon as it was a thing. So I started building those deep structures, to reference Snow Crash,
Yeah.
around being able to see 3D within 3D, which may be kind of an alien paradigm for other people that didn't have that upbringing and kind of force that altered perception of reality into themselves and be comfortable with it. That's a great point.
So how do we bridge the gap? I mean, we have in the Microsoft world, we have things like SharePoint Spaces, which is augmented, if you will, or even virtualized, if you will. But it's a virtual representation on a flat space, right? You're still looking at your
Right.
monitor. You're still it. You use the mouse to move things around. It's not a full immersive type of experience, and that doesn't seem to have caught on, and is not bringing people into the fold. The alt space thing is clunky. We've tried to do a couple of events in alt space.
Mhm.
The tooling isn't there. It's not as good as it could be, but it is a step in that direction. And I know Microsoft
Right.
is talking about doing some of those things as well. Is that the way we get there, by sort of taking some of these half steps, knowing that not everybody has a big thing of goggles they can put on, or do we wait? Is it a really slow crawl until everything catches up and then bang, it takes off?
Mhm. Well, there's a lot of experimentation that's for past 5 years related to this, so, and a lot of different ways and how to visualize your data. At the end of the day, right? If you're thinking about your workspace and how that workspace would look like in VR versus what it currently has. Sometimes it's bringing the space in to virtual reality. Uh, it it might take a sometimes it's harder, right? It'll be harder to get to that adoption just by just by replicating what we currently have. Like you have your files and and then just showing it in 3D. But there are some use cases where it really makes sense, right? If you think about how they build buildings and the building information systems, or how they build, uh, in the manufacturing factory world, right? Manufacturing world, VR and AR is. If you think about also NASA and space, right? And how they have a digital twin of the the whole device, right? So this is a good way to visualize the data. There's a lot of data that's coming in that's being ingested. But if you can actually see how that interacts with the machine,
Hmm.
it makes sense to visualize it that way. So if you're thinking about spreadsheets, that's the way we've been doing it before, right? What is the temperature of something, or what is the telemetry data or logs. But if you can see the logs on the machine itself, or right where it is supposed to be, right, when you're trying to debug and you're trying to figure out what's going on, that's where the power of VR and AR
Yeah.
provides.
Gartner was very big on, and I think at the EA conference at Gartner in 2018, maybe 2017, they were huge. Digital twinning was the next big thing that they had on all their presentations, and they thought that would be that virtual representation of all the systems that we only have this screen feed and this text file and this log and this beep and this toast message, being able to put those all into a context and visually represent it across a 3D model. Maybe a lot of times your 3D model is going to apply to a car engine, but you
Right.
could also make a virtual model of your cloud infrastructure and show Splunk data visually represented as hotspots within your environment, and being able to see a group of hotspots along your
Right.
perimeter, that you may be dealing with a DDoS attack versus that may show you something else, and be able to represent those and have those different three-dimensional heat maps, stuff we normally represent in 2D, but we have to
Right.
juggle so many 2D versions to get a 3D perspective, where I just want to look at the diagonal. I want to look at it organized by this way, and I can virtually get around, and I can spin my model, and I can see, okay, my diagonal is all green across the board. I've got the right number of events firing and fireflies across my thing. Somebody else's diagonal is showing a lot of errors and a lot of complaints, and a lot of CPU time. So those virtual representations, I think, will be big. We start getting all of that Splunk data to where we can kind of consume it at a glance, because we can show depth and other things. I think that would be fantastic.
Well, the way I kind of see it too is, like, for example, in a building, right, or even Google, the Google Maps, and be able to visualize it in a different way, and being able to say, okay, let me go get there, right? Take me to that spot, to take me to that experience. It's a different, what you call these. It's a different way on how you would understand the data also, and it seems like you would remember stuff because it becomes, uh, since it's spatial, because people remember things through spatial means, right? Meaning when you experience something, when you let's say you're walking down the park, you remember, you were able to capture a lot more data around that, because when the temperature, or the feeling, how you feel that day, would kind of help you understand the whole context. So the way I kind of see it also in terms of the data structure, right? uh, Buildings is easily represented in 3D, but being able to walk through the building before it was built and understand how it feels like being inside that building, and walk through the whole, or even the car, right? Being able to be inside the car before it's even built. That right there is a good visualization of data. uh, and it's harder to experience that through just screens, right? When you're Or just 2D screens, or something that is printed on paper, like brochures, right? Sometimes brochures, yeah, it gives you a little bit of information, but if you're actually was able to sit in the car, rather than reading the car brochure,
Mm-hmm.
it gives you that different experience, at the same time learning about that, how.
Do you, so, and we've only got 10 minutes left. What do you see in the future? What are the tools that you see coming out that are going to help make some of these changes? I'm looking for the next ARJS. You showed me that in 10 lines of code, I could go create a virtual reality application on a web page, and I was able to surface it to my company with a few hours of work, and I was able to make it meaningful in a couple of days. What's the next Ron Dagdag tip? What is exploding? What's going to blow up and crack open the use case and the capability for us to have enterprise VR and AR.
So the tool that we've used that I did demo before was A-Frame.js, which is allows you
A-Frame, yeah.
A-Frame, right? At A-Frame.io, and that one is a web framework in building a 3D or AR and VR experiences with the same utilities that you currently have. If you're a web developer, it really makes it easy for web developers to be able to do this. And then now you can actually view, A-Frame websites inside Quest. You can create the application for you. And I think more and more utilities are going to come out like that uh, to make it like, it depends on what you're trying to do, right? But I think more and more what's going to happen is that all the 2D content, billion dollar we spend a lot of billions of dollars in building 2D content, right? Like the TV shows and all that.
Mm-hmm.
How do we port or experience that in VR? So think about the movie theaters being in VR, those kind of things, and be able to get that experience and maybe add more, right? From let's start with the 2D screens, right? Port it inside VR and then expand that capability, expand that experience based from that. And I think more and more tools are going to be like be able to make that easy. Another way is be able to experience together, right? Build some stuff together. Like I think Facebook Horizons be able to work together in VR, meaning build assets inside VR, and be able to incorporate data, and what makes it really easy to get the data from the cloud, display it to the virtual screen. But sometimes, do we really need to wear a headset? Right? Do we really need to wear something in order to do this? So the company where I work for is more, uh, you know, creating this augmented reality experience without wearing any of the VR and AR headsets. How do you port that technology to retail space? So that's where we're focused on. So we have different experiences related to how you would use the augmented reality technologies into the retail space.
I was
So is
really
that
proud
things
of.
like
Oh,
how you, sorry, Paul, is that things like how you organize an end cap or how you effective stocking and laying out of product? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
So one of the products that we have is a touch car. So instead of you go to a car dealership, they give you a brochure. There is a way that you can actually be able to walk through and understand that product, or the hood that displayed on the hood of the car, and be able to work through and understand about the features of the car. So that's you don't have to wear any headset, be able to experience something that's augmented reality, because it's not just you're looking at a 2D screen, but you have the products right there. So we have all these different technologies we're building related to these, and the idea is not having a headset, or not wearing a VR and AR glasses, but still experience the augmented reality side.
Interesting.
So if you go to spacey.com, you'll see more and more of that technology.
I was I came up with a way. I presented at Dreamforce after seeing, and I built it off of A-Frame, and A-Frame's off of ARJS, and ARJS is off of the WebGL
Yes.
library.
Yeah,
And I eventually hopped down to ARJS and was using that, and I may have still been using the A-Frame library as well. But when I built my data incorporation, I loaded documents into Salesforce and had them show up in VR. And I had new documents in front of me that were limited to a certain number, and once they aged out, they went behind me. And I gave that presentation at Dreamforce, and there was the challenge of how to show a room full of people what VR looks like. And my phone, my Samsung phone, had an HDMI out, and I was able to use my phone as a viewport into the A-frame web page that I'd made, and it was able to track motion. And so in front of me in my phone, I could see the virtual reality, and I could move and navigate with the keyboard and touch and interact with stuff. I wired the HDMI output to a projector, and I took me and a projector with my phone attached to the back of the projector, and me dragging a cord around. I spun the projector to where I was looking and painted the VR scape on the walls for everybody to see. So even though there was only one projector there, I could paint it on the ceiling and the walls, and then I spun around and would paint it on the walls behind and said, there's my data, and then I was able to mouse scroll up to it, interact with it on the screen, and say, now I'm deleting this document, watch it drop to 3D. So I feel like there's a way to get group VR experiences working with kind of a projected reality or projection of augmented reality, adding that additional perspective. And if I can just get somebody, Accenture won't fund me to buy an IMAX theater to try and experiment with, but I'm still working on it. I think one day we will. But have you seen any other ways that people are kind of bending the rules and getting AR and VR to be more tangible? You talk about your touch car. There's no headset there. What are some other ways that people are doing to bring that digital twin, that virtual, that active reality, interactive reality?
So the actually mesh for Microsoft Teams is or the Microsoft Mesh or Azure Mesh. I don't know how but there's a way you can where you can actually work through and combine that experience, right? If you want to experience things together, that is kind of like a way to be able to connect these devices together and be able to kind of do a virtual communication that connects not just the HoloLens, it also connects virtual reality headsets and all that. So that's that is the glue between being able to connect devices. So let's say if you have an iPad application versus a HoloLens, and you want them to kind of connect and communicate with each other. That's where you use mesh. In terms of being able to reduce the amount of processing and streaming your 3D content, Azure has a remote rendering that you can look into. That is one way that that instead of processing on that device itself, sometimes when you're running VR devices and if you're processing 3D content there, it takes a lot of processing. It gets hot, so that's one way. The remote rendering be able to help you on that. The spatial anchors that Azure has related to, it's kind of like, I don't know if you remember the Pokemon Go, where you're in a specific location and you want to place an avatar or place an object in a specific location, and then and of course in this case, where you can go back, the next day, go back to the same spot, and the 3D content, it's still there, so it's anchored to that space. So this one would be useful if you're building something that is kind of like an immersive map, where you can share that the real world scale, right? The real world persistence.
Great.
Yeah, this is great stuff. I think we could probably talk for hours about this. A fascinating area that I know I know more today after this conversation than I probably did coming into it. So this has all been really good stuff. But unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it there. We have reached the end of our time for this month. So once again, I want to thank our sponsors, and please feel free to check out their information. check out some of the links that we posted during the show to various topics. Last one we posted was a link to the Microsoft Mesh. You can go check that out. They did a cool video at Ignite showing how that would work. Unfortunately, none of us have legs in that environment. Hopefully that's a technology we can resolve and one can get their legs back. And we will see you all possibly. I don't know if are we going to do a December segment, Paul, or not. I don't know if we're going to do one next month. Why not?
I'm game. Yeah.
Why not? We'll have a go.
Our schedules will calm down enough to where make it easier and have more stuff.
And we'll all wear virtual Santa hats.
Yeah.
Our augmentation for next month. Ron, I can't thank you enough for doing this. It's been a great conversation. Thank you very much for joining us this month. And we'll see you all next month.
All right. Yep. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.